You don't know? Earlier you suggested that all people naturally understand right and wrong. So, should Thomas die so that others may live?
Yes?
Enough! This isn't working. This entire conversation has become so muddled due to a constant, misleading misuse of conscientious language. You'll need a sharp side to cut through all this bull. Frog. A sort of subterfuge specialist. The Lord of the Lies. I'm happy to oblige.
Whoop, whoop! Reptilian Rapscallion! Reptilian Rapscallion! We've got a code yellow! Deceit!
What have you done with Logan? Nothing at all, and I resent the question. Hold on! What are you talking about, Deceit? Who's misleading who? Patton's misleading you.
Frogwash! I may be amphibian, but I can't say that I am fibbin'.
That's richer than Jeff Bezos coming from the self-proclaimed Lord of the Lies. Do keep it up with the wordplay. It never gets old. He didn't mislead you on purpose, Thomas. I don't think the little guy, or the big frog, is capable of that sort of thing. He may have just threatened the life of Broadway's original Aaron Burr himself, but you leave our rosy-cheeked riveter alone. Patton, I'm loving this new direction that you're going with your rhetoric, sprinkling in a few maybes, who knowses, or what do you think? Why are you doing that?
Because I found out that I was being too tough on Thomas and it was driving him hopping mad. So, I tried to share my thoughts in a softer way.
Right, because making Thomas feel inadequate for not dying in someone else's stead isn't tough at all. Here's the thing, Patton. Pushy is pushy. That faux flexible rhetoric that you're using to soften your approach doesn't change your intentions. It just disguises them. That was just a hypothetical. Patton's not actually suggesting that Thomas should pursue martyrdom.
Right, I don't want Thomas to croak. That's my job.
We're talking about what-ifs, worst-case scenario kind of stuff.
What I am saying is Thomas has a really good life that other people don't. You're over there talking about putting on your oxygen mask before helping another passenger, but we're not in a crashing plane. If the situation was that serious, then sure, he can focus entirely on himself. But does he deserve it? I don't know. Man, I don't know if I can believe whatever you tell me. Treating yourself is something that you can take too far.
You can take anything too far, Patton. You've taken things too far. The plane is going down. You need to give Thomas some room to breathe. Beaten him before. The actual snake on the plane! You know, I'm actually glad you brought up the oxygen mask illustration again, Pat. He's just... That does sound like a very funny, wholesome prank, but no. The idea is that you need not reach for your oxygen mask unless the plane is... But when you apply that logic to real life, the analogy falls apart. But self-care shouldn't be put off until you experience a mental health crisis. Training to be a lifeguard, practicing and preparing and building. You're inevitably faced with an emergency. Better equipped to handle it. Realize that before you brought it up. Sure, you realize a metaphor someone makes up on the spot isn't going to be perfect. Oh, shit. One last fact then for an activist who champions the movement, the primary feature that differentiates effective altruism and actually be effective is not effective altruism because that money are inclined to should go into fields more money to give. Can't forget that part. Feeling depressed or like you're... What do you know? If it came down to video games or volunteering at a local, might be okay to prioritize gaming sometimes. If video games are an essential ingredient in your recipe for self-care. Whatever, sure, if that's your thing. I mean, totally, yes, of course. But... mental with the same life or death attitude as physical. Guilty for taking care of it. But you were also taught that Christopher Columbus was a pretty cool... A lot of your education was... Of course, shit, forgive the pun. You mean a 1A. Bogan anymore. You're right. So, why don't we move on to something we're both familiar with, Roman? Mistakes. Very impressed with you. You made such a noble sacrifice. I don't need to flatter you. I mean this. You made a significant sacrifice when you sentenced Thomas to attend. That was a costly choice. Thomas lost and a good amount of mental health points in the name of being. He didn't get anything out of it other than a new. It's the closest to an act of true selflessness that I. And look, it served no one. Thomas showing face as much as they would have appreciated any other. So if they gained nothing and we lost, then it was a net loss. Maybe selfless isn't always the answer. You need to unlearn that selfish is for your sake. You need to start practicing a little more selfishness, as all things should be. Well, almost all things. You're right, we wouldn't want to plant too many trees. Just think of all the CO2 that might be absorbed. Trees? A good question for another time. But I'm sure you'd have us believe you are weak. Hits and wrongs. I don't have a simple answer to that question. But here's a start. My name. My name is Janus. Oh, Roman, thank God you don't have a mustache. And Remus, I wouldn't know who the evil twin is. I can't believe this. Oh, definitely not. I'd love for someone to ruin one apology at a time. The reality is that it depends. Where to start? How many things have they had to apologize for? How frequently do they have? How terrible were the things that they did? One of the biggest, very humble opinion, is whether or not honest effort to do better. That does sound very annoying. Again, it depends. It's okay. Thank you, Junior, everyone. This is Sandra sides, not Odom sides. I'm not threatened at all. Even those can get kind of complicated. I know you'll do. Yeah, that's cool. Talk about me like I'm not here. I'll take care of it. So, I suppose now we need to nudge down a flight of stairs until they hold another round of callback. Relax, I'm kidding. Of course I'm kidding. Baby steps. Right, of course. There are much less barbaric, much more fun forms of sabotage. You're not stuck with an evil snake boy. You're just stuck with a snake boy. But seriously, using a mobile game to hide from your sadness and regret at the wedding doesn't count as leisure. Take some time for yourself, Thomas. I'm sorry, what was that? I couldn't hear you. It feels so good! So good! And I know how much you love these constant dilemmas, so please, keep overthinking everything.